At various points, I've thought about my identity and how I see myself, and I realized, hi, I'm Salvatore. The other day, I did a video about self-identity, and it went really, really well. So I kind of wanted to take a step further and kind of explore more about that. So if you stay with me on this video and listen to the end, you'll have lots of insights into many ways that you can change how you see yourself, and like tangible steps that you can do to implement to create that identity that you want, right? So of course, it's going to be a bit of a long video, but that's kind of the point. I kind of want to step you through how the earliest memories I had and kind of all the way to now. Like, the way I see myself is, at the moment, I've kind of had some successes, but to be fair, I've got a long way to go. So I've got quite a bit of processes and things that I feel I need to achieve, first and foremost. So of course, if you see me just stop and pause, this is a long video, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm sort of covering off what's going to be of value. And of course, please share below the earliest memory you had, of your childhood, and kind of how you saw yourself by reflecting on that. Now, of course, without further ado, let's get into it, right? Okay, so the earliest memory I had when I was young revolved around being in preschool. So kind of like kindergarten, as some would say. And I remember I think it was lunchtime, and we were outside playing. It was a nice day. There was a soccer ball being moved around, so I think we were playing soccer. And then I remembered that there was this kid sitting down, and the ball got close to that person, and I wound up for a big kick, and instead of kicking the ball, I kicked him, like squarely in the butt, and I think he kind of cried, or it was quite almost a scene. And that was kind of when I realized, like, like, what have I done, right? So in that moment, it was lunchtime. I kind of ran off to the another area of the outside, like the playground, this like wooden, play gym equipment, whatever you want to call it, and kind of like hid up there, more like the bridge point. So I was quite scared. I was thinking, oh no, I'm in trouble. What have I done? What are they gonna see? This and that. So I was a bit disappointed in myself. And then, before you knew it, the lunch was over. And then what had happened was, everyone had of course gone inside and they were reading or having nap time or something or other. But for me, I froze. I did not want to leave. I just couldn't fathom going inside. I was so scared, right? So at this point, I kind of realized I was a bit of an overthinker. And also I was like, I must have not been hungry because I must have eaten before that, or I was so scared the thought of eating didn't really come into my mind. I was just kind of sitting out there waiting for the rest of the day to pass, and then for it to be home time and for me to go home and without, realizing anything and everything being okay. Whereas I probably didn't realize that no one probably would cared. And even if I did get in trouble, I think being honest to say that I thought it was the ball or something, as I remembered it right now, looking back, some 23, 24 years, was such that, I didn't really intend to do that, right? So I think that would have been fine. But for some reason, I just overthought it and I freaked out, right? Crazy. So it's kind of like a bit of a crybaby in that sense. Now then, transition to the start of school for me, reception as they call it. I kind of joined towards the end of the year for like reception. So I was kind of in a class with people that were a bit more older. They'd been there from the start of the year, a bit more experience than me. So I didn't kind of really fit in that well. And what had happened was I kind of kept more to myself. I was a bit of I collected sticks. It was really random. And so like I had all these sticks collected, and I kind of like these little sticks. I don't know why. I just thought it was really cool. So I kind of collected them, put them in my bag. You know, just kind of like played with myself, just all by myself because no one wanted to play with me. So I wasn't really, you know, super confident back then. So it was kind of like not the best, and I kind of got picked on and bullied a bit, right? So I was not only like an overthinker, a crybaby, I was a bit of a dork, I was a bit introverted, right? So that kind of concluded, in a sense, the first part of preschool reception, right? That was kind of what happened. But then what happened in the next year was that, of course, I went back into reception to do the full year starting from the beginning, right? So in doing so, there I was. Of course, the opportunity presented that I kind of knew how I saw myself. But seeing as it was a new year, something almost like clicked in my mind. I kind of put all that to the side of what I'd experienced before. As I saw there in front of me as I walked into the classroom, a little boy sat down playing with a white bucket, and inside that white bucket was a bunch of kind of like these blocks and things that we put together. You can make shape, make designs and things and creatures or this and that. So I kind of walked over, said, "Hi, my name is, how are you? Would I be able to play with you?" Now, of course, this person didn't know how I saw myself, but he was super friendly, and we ended up playing together. And that was like the first memory I had with that person, who later became my best friend. And what had happened was we ended up bonding over our love and mutual interest of Pokemon, video games, playing outside, being boys, using our imagination to play like games and stuff. So interestingly, that element about me that I kind of saw myself as a dork, a bit introverted, kind of ended up helping me to resonate with this person, and kind of having that chance to reframe myself and introduce myself as someone fresh was someone that he actually wanted to enjoy and spend time with as well, as opposed to this dork who was just collecting sticks, right? How boring. So I kind of already at that point, like, somewhat had shifted like my identity, right? Pretty crazy, hey? So I guess in a similar kind of timeline, or around that time, to explain the dork side, like when I was young, my parents quite fortunately gifted me with some video game console and some video games on them. So I kind of had a bit of an interest in playing video games. I like the feeling of beating video games and getting to the next level and getting stronger and figuring out the story and beating the game. I saw it as a big colossal achievement, right? I used my brain to figure it out, whatever, right? So this was kind of like the dork side of me that kind of came through, and video games kind of became a thing that was quite entrenched in me, and I'll kind of get to that as we continue with this story. But you'll see that there were these elements that were kind of starting to form, and interestingly, I wasn't a complete shut-in, so I played as a kid. I did a lot of sports. I did like tennis, soccer, table tennis. I did some other sports as well. I was always loved PE at school. But getting into my other early memories of primary school, it was around the years of maybe year 3, 4, was a type of little athletics. And what had happened was we were introduced to the idea of running 100-meter races and 200-meter races. And it turned out that I had like a little bit of a knack for this, or some type of level of talent to some degree. And I ended up placing pretty well in the school for 100 and 200 meters. So because of this, I almost kind of saw myself as an athlete, because what this led to was going to other areas where I would represent the school and run 100-meter and 200-meter races. And I'd get like, a second and third or first place ribbon. But actually, speaking of that competitiveness, let me go back a bit. So I forgot to share another key story from being really young. So when I was at preschool, as well as being an overthinker, I was also something else. What had happened was, I think it was a yearly event. You kind of all the parents were there, It was like this big, almost marathon really, where you kind of went all around the school and, you know, you did the thing. I was doing my thing and my dad was there. You know, he came from work, he had his suit on, very serious. And, you know, I was almost finished. I was doing my best. I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing great, you know, yada, 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 having lots of fun. And that's when I saw it. I saw that there was someone that was holding a plastic bag. What in that plastic bag with these medals? You know, to say, you know, well done, you're a champion, whatever. So when I immediately saw that, I kind of realized, well, this is a bit stupid. Like, everyone gets one. What's the point? Like, I'm just getting some cheap metal from a plastic bag. Like, it kind of devalued it heaps. But it's almost like it took me away from the moment of just having fun and kind of doing the thing to being like, well, actually, all of us are getting a medal, but there's no first, last place. Like, I think it was like trying to reconcile this sense of competitiveness in me, but I just couldn't quite figure it out. So my response at that time was to, as I was crossing the bridge, I just started crying and I just got upset and I said I didn't want to finish the race. And then my dad was like, come on, finish the race. And he's like, you know, grow up, this and that. Then I eventually finished. I accepted the medal from the plastic bag. I was like reluctant to do so. So I was like like this weird competitive crybaby. That's kind of like how I saw myself. But then when you know, transition into me being in these events for school, which we called like SAPSASA, like South Australian, I can't even remember. Like, this is like a district thing. You actually got real first, second, third place ribbons. I think maybe they even had a fourth place sometimes for competing and doing pretty well. And that was where like this sense of like doing well athletically kind of came through. And I was like, this is actually really fun. Of course, I will say that I was quite, you know, privileged to have that ability to run 100 and 200 meters to that extent, you know, in a local level. Really instilled in me that sense of like competitiveness and like sense of being outside to kind of, you know, push myself and so on and so forth, right? So we've got this sense of how I was in primary school in terms of my ability to make friends with my best friend, how we would play, how I would, you know, play video games, how I would also, you know, got the opportunity to compete for my school, right, in an athletics events, which is super crazy, right? Then let's move on to kind of as I get into high school. Again, high school, new area, hadn't met people before. What happened in high school was, like, again, another opportunity to kind of reframe how I wanted to see myself, right? Kind of as this was happening, I'd recently kind of discovered that through going to a local shopping mall, because I had like this little plastic yo-yo, there were people that were older than me by a couple of years that had yo-yos as well, and they started to play with yo-yos, and there was like a competition, and they were showing us how to do tricks that I'd never seen before. I was completely blown away. I thought this was the coolest thing ever, right? So this is kind of where it took it to another level, where I was really excited to kind of become almost a yo-yo, where I got the yo-yos, I did the tricks, I went to the, you know, competitions, I wanted to do this and that. So kind of like more of the dork side of me, if you will, coming out, where I saw myself as someone like, well, maybe I could be like a yo-yoer as well, you know, doing tricks, coming up with my own routines and this and that, music, quite fun, right? So that's kind of like the sense of wanting to push that way, right? So then when I get to high school, I realized that I actually could do quite a number of things, in the sense that I was a sporty kid. Like being outside, I was quite competitive. I liked playing video games. I also liked like anime and cartoons, stuff like that. So I could actually, and also like got into table tennis as well, because that was like a sport that I could do at my high school, which I thought was really cool. So there was all these things. So this kind of meant that, like, as I was younger in high school, I didn't really like talking, or middle school, whatever you want to call it, middle school, high school. I didn't really, talk to girls. I was quite a shy, introverted person, right? But I did like talking to the guys. And I did realize that I could actually talk to all the group of guys almost. I could talk to the guys that played video games, share our interest about those video games. I could talk to the boys that like soccer. We could talk about soccer here and there because I used to play a bit of school soccer and club soccer. I could talk to those that were more popular but played certain types of video games like your Call of Duties, your Halo. We'd kind of talk about that. So I was almost like a chameleon in the sense that I could, talk with everyone, and I could talk to those that were also in the table tennis team. So we were friends as well. So kind of it allowed me to, through all these different facets, be quite like multi-dimensional in the sense that I could interact with everyone. And then also like one of my other friends in school, he got into yo-yos too, so we were like yo-yoing together. Of course, this is seen as like dorky by those outside, but people knew me in this guy as like the guys that yo-yos, so it was like another interesting thing. And during my like high school years, I kind of took yo-yo to like a regional, national, and then went to worlds. I wasn't like exceptionally good, but like I practiced, I built routines, I got better. I'd love to share that story about kind of why I put so much into yo-yo and kind of what I take from that going forward, and kind of why I didn't continue on with it in the sense that like some others around me have and have had much success. So you can kind of see that like your ability to reframe your identity can kind of is driven by you and kind of how you believe and see yourself. So by being in these new situations, you can kind of share that, right? So I guess if I transition over to university, I kind of wanted to get into law school. My grades weren't good enough in year 12, so I couldn't get into the law school, right? So I became an art student, then eventually transitioned into law school. But around this time, I was playing video games, I was playing with yo-yo, I became a part-time barista, so I was like getting into coffee. So we've got all these kind of facets building about me, right? So then, I probably was a bit too old to play video games at this point, but I guess my logic was such that because I finished all my uni work, I was allowed to play type of thing, like a bit juvenile, but I never kind of put it off at the detriment of my studies, so I kind of got to do that. And then I also, worked as a barista, and then eventually I found and fell in love with cycling, so I kind of became a bit of a cyclist. So kind of by the time I had transitioned into law school, I was almost like the person riding the bike. So my friends saw me as kind of like the bike guy. Sometimes I would show them the yo-yo tricks, so they kind of saw me as a bit of that person as well. Like it was kind of like, so for 2015 I went to Yo-Yo Worlds in Japan, so that was really fun. So of course I went all in on yo-yo from like the years 2014 to 2015, saved up my money, paid for the opportunity to travel there. And then of course kind of finishing this arc, I managed to, ride a bike, fall in love with that. And I slowly started to get back into try the idea of getting into long distance running, leveraging off the feelings of being, athletic when I was, in years 3 and 4 and kind of doing 100, 200 meter races. I wanted to kind of level up myself in that way. So this was kind of taking me away from playing video games, which is something I wasn't particularly proud of, but by having the cycling and the running, I was starting to kind of do things more outside in nature, as I would as a kid, whenever it was recess lunchtime, I'd always be out playing soccer with my friends, or with my best friend, we'd be playing in our imaginations, just on the playground, just being boys, or playing handball or something, so on and so forth, right? So what I'd effectively done was I'd kind of done that, and then eventually I went to law school. I finished that, but I guess my grades weren't the best. So because of that, I was quite still introverted and shy, not confident of my abilities. And I feel that really translated over to me just wanting to work in hospitality and not necessarily taking that next leap to start transitioning into the corporate world through some really good internships. But I eventually did do some like volunteer work as part of getting in my legal practice degree. But in terms of really strong paid internships that would lead to a full-time job either during uni or more towards the tail end, I hadn't really set myself up for that. And I feel like a lot of my identity with how I saw myself as a law student, being that I didn't really get in straight from school, I had to kind of take the internal transfer route in, might have like played a factor in that, right? So it was really interesting. So then, and this is a long video, right? But I'm just trying to kind of share like how my journey has gone about and just to kind of get you to think about where you're at, right? And this is where things get really interesting at this point. So I finished law school, was trying to look for my first corporate job, right? And then an opportunity presented itself where I was talking to someone that asked if I wanted to do or have a stint in doing tax advisory, like applying tax law to help, clients with their particular situations. And I thought to myself, well, hang on a sec, I actually haven't done any tax law in uni. It was an elective and I didn't pick to do it. I was like, well, I don't know about this. I've never done it before. But then I thought, you know what? I need my first job. I need to try. Tax seems interesting. The pitch was pretty good. Why not try it? So I went from someone that didn't know tax, and of course, it was a bit of a long road, into someone that actually really enjoyed doing it. And eventually, by simply having the job, I fell in love with the role and really fell in love with the process of understanding how tax law worked. And kind of I became like the tax law guy in the firm that got, excited about legislation, how certain things affect this, like really knowing the inner details, right? But of course I had no formal study on the topic in particular. I just had my legal reasoning drilled into me from law school, which is really, really interesting. Like now that I think back on it, that, I took such a gamble and eventually by doing the thing, the identity had kind of formed around it, even though it was a serious corporate environment. Of course, there was facilities and people and mentoring in place to allow me to kind of understand small tasks and then build from that, to have more confidence and so on and so forth, right? Now that takes me to now where I've kind of shifted to another job in the public sector where I've actually, taken a step up and got to apply tax law to a more international sense. Again, not really having much of an experience, but thinking, you know what, why not go for it? And here I am. So now I'm someone, and also during law school, I forgot to mention, sorry, I started like a YouTube channel because I was really interested in fashion. So I was trying to get other people excited about fashion, but I dressed terribly. And it was a bit embarrassing and I wasn't really happy with it. But ironically enough, the last video I did, which I was kind of actually happy about, ended up getting 1,000 views. So maybe if I just stuck with that or kind of took it down that niche, who knows? But anyway, back at it again, I'm kind of sharing stories. But this time I feel like I can really leverage off a lot of what I've learned and kind of share with you how to kind of take what I've done, but kind of have more of a shortcut approach or what would be done better second time around, to have that guidance that I wish I had. And someone that had kind of been through things, which is kind of where we're at now, right? So that kind of gets us again now. So I've got a job doing international tax law, quite cool, right? I'm trying to balance, of course, getting better at like my cycling and my running. I'm really trying to invest in getting faster at 5K. I'm also in the process of course, building this YouTube and sharing my story with you. I'm balancing, having a long-term relationship, for almost 4 years now. I'm trying to, get better at cooking. I live out of home. I'm trying to kind of balance all these things and kind of share with you that on my journey as I, try to become a better person, and to share with you kind of more sustainable practices to achieve that, and kind of more like long-term, bigger picture type of thinking, if that makes sense. And of course, with identity, you can see that we've kind of gone quite a long way from, if we think of the first memory I had of myself being someone that was an overthinker, crybaby, all the way to now someone who has effectively figured out his niche or sense in terms of a job security prospects that he's actually quite happy with, but is also able to leverage the extra time through flexible working arrangements where I can invest back into myself to pursue passion projects such as cycling, running, cooking, and lifestyle, to kind of just really grow myself and really understand. Oh, and of course, living outside of home, all those trials and tribulations that carries with it as well, and the levels of development and self-discovery too, right? And all, of course, while riding my bike to work and saving lots of money along the process. So that's like the identity now. I am someone that practices or helps with applying tax law to international tax law, who's quite an avid person into fitness. He's quite competitive, trying to build his own brand on YouTube and share fantastic stories and instill and inspire others to conquer mountains and conquer life. And of course, just trying to balance all that with being the best me that I can. So I guess what I'm trying to get and instill in you to conquer the mountains and conquer life is that you have to take a step back and you have to realize, well, what mountains do you actually want to conquer? Who are you around that is going to facilitate that, or is part of an identity that you no longer want to be a part of, right? Are you still hanging out with people that play video games every night? Are they telling you to play video games? Do you feel pressured into doing so? Would you rather get to bed early, get up early, go for a run, meditate, journal, think about what you want to achieve, your goals, and kind of be around more people that are driven in that sense and go towards that more, fulfilling mountain, right? And of course, by meeting those new people, they'll be able to see that you're trying to do this stuff, so they'll help you, opposed to being around a bunch of people that don't really agree with the identity, are kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They're more enabling the bad habits, like playing video games, being up late, eating junk food, all that stuff, right? So that's where you kind of got to ask yourself, like, what identity do you actually want to form? And I've been quite lucky in my life in the sense that I've done quite a lot of things, and I've kind of realized that for me, I love being outside, I love pushing myself athletically, I love feeling fit, I love inspiring others, I love understanding something as complex as tax law to the best I can. And I just like pushing myself and getting in that flow state. Like, look, and I guess through all this, I've been able to kick my video game addiction by channeling it into something a lot more productive. And of course, I will admit that I still do listen to video game music to get me into a flow state, to help with my scripting, making these videos, and just have on in the background of life when I'm cooking. But for the part of actually sitting down playing the game, it's no longer really had such a grasp over me, and it doesn't make me feel like I'm that nerdy, dorky video gamer kid, which has been like the hardest thing to shake, to be honest. But the fact I've kind of like can look back on it now, like that's kind of what I've been able to do, just position myself around people that I'm quite, inspired to be around, and vice versa. And it's just fantastic, right? So there it is. It's a long video. I really do appreciate you sticking around. So what I would like you to share is perhaps an early memory that you had of yourself, and kind of what you saw yourself looking back on it now as, and kind of like what you're working towards now. If you subscribe, like, we can have more videos like this, and I'll share along my journey with how I've gotten better at my cycling, my running, my cooking, and lifestyle, and all these other factors, right? Of course, I offer one-on-one coaching as well. If one of the links below it says that, you can follow it. I'll help you with your goals, and we can start tracking out how to kind of change your identity for what you want it to be, and have some really good steps. And I can answer some questions ahead of time. If you'd like to have an identity where you're someone that rides a bike, you really know your area, you're quite fit, you're a leader, you're someone that just has this zest and energy and so different to everyone around you, then I would recommend you get a copy of Life Cycles in the link below, where I teach you everything to getting the bike, the perfect bike for you, sizing it, safety stuff that you actually need to ride the bike to save money, the training that you'll need to do on the bike to conquer the mountains, of course the nutrition on the bike and off the bike, the recovery off the bike and somewhat on the bike, to kind of, get good sleep and kind of get back at it so you can ride stronger, all the training that you'll need to do, all this stuff I've condensed and distilled into 4 key phases: getting the bike, training on the bike, off the bike, eating, recovery. Getting the bike, you need to start cycling, training, and then recovery off the bike. So of course I've got my citations in there as well, and it's 160 pages. So that's it. That's what I want to leave you with. Conquer mountains, conquer life,